Welcome to Wiki History, where we unravel the mysteries of the past. Today, we delve into the captivating and controversial life of Grigori Rasputin, the Siberian mystic who held an astonishing grip on the final years of the Russian Empire. Before we plunge into this incredible story, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more historical deep dives. Now, let's journey back to a time when a peasant's influence could shake the foundations of a dynasty. Grigori Yefimovich Rasputin, born on the 21st of January 1869 and dying on the 30th of December 1916, was a Russian mystic and faith healer. He is best known for befriending the imperial family of Nicholas II, the last emperor of Russia, through whom he gained considerable influence in the final years of the Russian Empire. Rasputin was born to a family of peasants in the Siberian village of Pokrovskoye, located within what is now the Yarkovsky district in Tyumen Oblast. He had a religious conversion experience after embarking on a pilgrimage to a monastery in 1897, and has been described as a monk or as a stranik, meaning a wanderer or pilgrim, though he held no official position in the Russian Orthodox Church. In 1903, or in the winter from 1904 to 1905, he traveled to St. Petersburg and captivated a number of religious and social leaders, eventually becoming a prominent figure in Russian society. In November 1905, Rasputin met Nicholas II and his empress consort, Alexandra Fedorovna. In late 1906, Rasputin began acting as a faith healer for Nicholas and Alexandra's only son, Alexei Nikolaevich, who suffered from hemophilia. He was a divisive figure at court, seen by some Russians as a mystic, visionary, and prophet, and by others as a religious charlatan. The extent of Rasputin's power reached an all-time high in 1915, when Nicholas left St. Petersburg to oversee the Imperial Russian Army as it was engaged in the First World War. In his absence, Rasputin and Alexandra consolidated their influence across the Russian Empire. However, as Russian military defeats mounted on the Eastern Front, both figures became increasingly unpopular. In the early morning of the 30th of December 1916, Rasputin was assassinated by a group of conservative Russian noblemen who opposed his influence over the imperial family. Historians often suggest that Rasputin's scandalous and sinister reputation helped discredit the Tsarist government, thus precipitating the overthrow of the House of Romanov shortly after his assassination. Accounts of his life and influence were often based on common rumors. He remains a mysterious and captivating figure in popular culture. Grigori Yefimovich Rasputin was born a peasant in the small village of Pokrovskoye, along the Chura River in the Tobolsk Governorate, now Tyumen Oblast, in the Russian Empire. According to official records, he was born on the 21st of January 1869 and christened the following day. His father, Yefim, born in 1842 and dying in 1916, was a peasant farmer and church elder. He married Rasputin's mother, Anna Parshukova, born around 1840 and dying in 1906 in 1863. The couple had 7 other children, all of whom died in infancy or early childhood. Historians agree that, like most Siberian peasants, Rasputin was not formally educated and remained illiterate well into his early adulthood. Local records suggest he had a somewhat unruly youth, possibly involving drinking, small thefts, and disrespect for local authorities. In 1886, Rasputin traveled to Abalak, some 250 kilometers east-northeast of Tyumen and 2,800 kilometers east of Moscow, where he met a peasant girl named Praskovia Dubrovina. After a courtship of several months, they married in February 1887. Praskovia remained in Pokrovskoye throughout Rasputin's later travels and rise to prominence, and remained devoted to him until his death. The couple had 7 children, though only 3 survived to adulthood. Dmitry, born in 1895, Maria, born in 1898, and Varvara, born in 1900. In 1897, Rasputin developed a renewed interest in religion and left Pokrovskoye to go on a pilgrimage. His reasons are unclear. Some sources suggest he left to escape punishment for horse theft, others that he had a vision of the Virgin Mary or of Saint Simeon of Verkhovtcharai. Whatever his reasons, Rasputin cast off his old life. He was 28 years old, married 10 years, with an infant son and another child on the way. His decision could only have been occasioned by some sort of emotional or spiritual crisis. His visit to the St. Nicholas Monastery at Verkhovtcharai in 1897 transformed him. There, he met and was profoundly humbled by a starets, or elder, known as Macquarie. Rasputin may have spent several months at Verkhovtcharai, and it was perhaps here that he learned to read and write. Rasputin returned to Pokrovskoye a changed man, looking disheveled and behaving differently. He became a vegetarian, swore off alcohol, and prayed and sang much more fervently than he had in the past. Rasputin spent the years that followed as a stranik, a holy wanderer or pilgrim, leaving Pokrovskoye for months or even years at a time to wander the country and visit a variety of holy sites. It is possible he wandered as far as Mount Athos, the center of Eastern Orthodox monastic life, in 1900. By the early 1900s, Rasputin had developed a small circle of followers, primarily family members and other local peasants, who prayed with him on Sundays and other holy days when he was in Pokrovskoye. Building a makeshift chapel in Yefim's root cellar, Rasputin was still living within his father's household at the time. The group held secret prayer meetings there. These meetings were the subject of some suspicion and hostility from the village priest and other villagers. It was rumored that female followers were ceremonially washing Rasputin before each meeting, that the group sang strange songs, and even that Rasputin had joined the Kh-Listi, a religious sect whose ecstatic rituals were rumored to include self-flagellation and sexual orgies. According to Fuhrman, however, repeated investigations failed to establish that Rasputin was ever a member of the sect, and rumors that he was a Kh-List appear to have been unfounded. Word of Rasputin's activity and charisma began to spread in Siberia during the early 1900s. At some point during 1904 or 1905, he traveled to the city of Kazan, where he acquired a reputation as a wise starets who could help people resolve their spiritual crises and anxieties. Despite rumors that Rasputin was having sex with female followers, he made a favorable impression on several local religious leaders. Among these were Archimandrite Andrei and Bishop Christhanos, who gave Rasputin a letter of recommendation to Bishop Sergei, the rector of the theological seminary at the Alexander Nevsky Monastery, and arranged for him to travel to St. Petersburg. Upon arriving at the Alexander Nevsky Lavra, Rasputin was introduced to church leaders, including Archimandrite Theophan, inspector of the theological seminary, who was well connected in St. Petersburg society and later served as confessor to the imperial family. Theophan was so impressed with Rasputin that he invited him to stay in his home. He went on to become one of Rasputin's most important friends in St. Petersburg, gaining him entry to many of the influential salons where the local aristocracy gathered for religious discussions. Alternative religious movements such as spiritualism and theosophy had become popular among St. Petersburg's aristocracy before Rasputin's arrival, and many of the aristocracy were intensely curious about the occult and the supernatural. Rasputin's ideas and strange manners made him the subject of intense curiosity among the city's elite, who were bored, cynical, and seeking new experiences during this period. Rasputin's appeal may have been enhanced by the fact that he was also a native Russian. Unlike other self-described holy men such as Nizir Anthelmy Philippe and Gerard Encausse, who had previously been popular in St. Petersburg. Regardless, by 1905, Rasputin had formed friendships with several members of the aristocracy, including the Black Princesses, Militsa and Anastasia of Montenegro, who had married cousins of Tsar Nicholas II. Grand Duke Peter Nikolaevich and Prince George Maximilianovich Romanovsky, and were instrumental in introducing Rasputin to the Tsar and his family. Rasputin first met Nicholas on the 1st of November 1905 at the Peterhof Palace. The Tsar recorded the event in his diary, writing that he and his empress consort, Alexandra Fedorovna, had made the acquaintance of a man of God, Grigori, from Tobolsk province. Rasputin returned to Pokrovskoye shortly after their first meeting, and did not return to St. Petersburg until July 1906. On his return, he sent Nicholas a telegram asking to present the Tsar with an icon of Saint Simeon of Verkhovtchay. He met with Nicholas and Alexandra on the 18th of July and again in October, when he first met their children. At some point, Nicholas and Alexandra became convinced that Rasputin possessed the miraculous power to heal their only son, Tsesarevich Alexei Nikolaevich, who suffered from hemophilia. Much of Rasputin's influence with the imperial family stemmed from the belief by Alexandra, and others that he had on several occasions eased Alexei's pain and stopped his bleeding. According to historian Mark Farrow, the Tsarina had a passionate attachment to Rasputin, believing he could heal her son's affliction. Harold Schuckman wrote that Rasputin became an indispensable member of the royal entourage. He may have been aware of Alexei's condition as early as October 1906 and was summoned by Alexandra to pray for the Tsarevich when he had an internal hemorrhage in the spring of 1907. Alexei recovered the next morning. Alexandra's friend Anna Vyrubova became convinced that Rasputin had miraculous powers shortly thereafter, and became one of his most influential advocates. During the summer of 1912, Alexei developed a hemorrhage in his thigh and groin after a jolting carriage ride near the imperial hunting grounds at Spala, which caused a large hematoma. In severe pain and delirious with fever, the Tsarevich appeared close to death. In desperation, Alexandra asked Anna Vyrubova to send Rasputin, who was in Siberia, a telegram asking him to pray for Alexei. Rasputin wrote back quickly, telling the Tsarina that God has seen your tears and heard your prayers. Do not grieve. The little one will not die. Do not allow the doctors to bother him too much. The next morning, Alexei's condition was unchanged, but Alexandra was encouraged by the message and regained some hope that he would survive. His bleeding stopped the following day. Dr. S.P. Fedorov, one of the physicians who attended Alexei, admitted that the recovery was wholly inexplicable from a medical point of view. Later, Dr. Fedorov admitted that Alexandra could not be blamed for seeing Rasputin as a miracle man. Rasputin would come in, walk up to the patient, look at him, and spit. The bleeding would stop in no time. How could the Empress not trust Rasputin after that? Historian Robert K. Massey has called Alexei's recovery one of the most mysterious episodes of the whole Rasputin legend. The cause of his recovery is unclear. Massey speculated that Rasputin's suggestion not to let doctors disturb Alexei had aided his recovery by allowing him to rest and heal, or that his message may have aided Alexei's recovery by calming his mother and reducing the Tsarevich's emotional stress. Alexandra believed that Rasputin had performed a miracle and concluded that he was essential to Alexei's survival. Some writers and historians, such as Mark Farrow, claim that Rasputin stopped Alexei's bleeding on other occasions through hypnosis. Still other historians, including memoirist Pierre Gilliard, Alexei's French-language tutor, have speculated that Rasputin controlled Alexei's bleeding by disallowing the administration of aspirin, then widely used to relieve pain, but unknown as an anti-clotting agent until the 1950s. Alexei and his siblings were also taught to view Rasputin as our friend and to share confidences with him. In the autumn of 1907, their aunt, Grand Duchess Olga Alexandrovna, was escorted to the nursery by Nicholas II to meet Rasputin. Maria, her sisters, and brother Alexei were all wearing their long white nightgowns. Olga Alexandrovna recalled that all the children seemed to like him and were completely at ease with him. Rasputin's friendship with the Tsar's children was evident in the messages he sent to them. In one telegram in 1908, Rasputin wrote to the 9-year-old Maria, "My dear Pearl M. Tell me how you talked with the sea, with nature. I miss your simple soul. We will see each other soon. A big kiss." In February 1909, Rasputin sent all of the children a telegram, advising them to love the whole of God's nature, the whole of his creation, in particular this earth. The Mother of God was always occupied with flowers and needlework. One of the girls' governesses, Sofia Ivanovna Tyucheva, was horrified in 1910 when Rasputin was permitted access to the nursery when the 4 girls were in their nightgowns. Tyucheva wanted Rasputin barred from the nurseries. In response to her complaints, Nicholas asked Rasputin to end his nursery visits. Maria's 12-year-old sister Tatyana wrote to her mother on the 8th of March 1910, saying she was so afraid that Sofia Ivanovna could speak something bad about their friend. She hoped their nurse would be nice to their friend now. Alexandra eventually had Tyucheva fired. Sofia Ivanovna Tyucheva took her story to other members of the imperial family, who were scandalized by the reports, though Rasputin's contacts with the children were by all accounts completely innocent. Nicholas II's sister, Grand Duchess Xenia Alexandrovna, was horrified by Tyucheva's story. Xenia wrote on the 15th of March 1910 that she could not understand the attitude of Alex and the children to that sinister Grigori, whom they considered to be almost a saint, when in fact he was only a KH list. She noted that he was always there, went into the nursery, visited Olga and Tatyana while they were getting ready for bed, sat there talking to them and caressing them. She added that they were careful to hide him from Sofia Ivanovna, and the children did not dare talk to her about him. It was all quite unbelievable and beyond understanding. Another of the nursery governesses claimed in the spring of 1910 that she was raped by Rasputin. Maria Ivanovna Vishnyakova had at first been a devotee of Rasputin, but later was disillusioned by him. Alexandra refused to believe Vishnyakova and said that everything Rasputin does is holy. Grand Duchess Olga Alexandrovna was told that Vishnyakova's claim had been immediately investigated, but they caught the young woman in bed with a Cossack of the Imperial Guard. Vishnyakova was dismissed from her post in 1913. It was whispered in society that Rasputin had seduced not only Alexandra, but also the 4 Grand Duchesses. Rasputin had released ardent letters written to him by the Tsarina and the Grand Duchesses, which circulated throughout society and fueled the rumors. Pornographic cartoons also circulated that depicted Rasputin having sexual relations with the Tsarina, with her 4 daughters and Anna Vyrubova nude in the background. Nicholas II ordered Rasputin to leave St. Petersburg for a time, much to Alexandra's displeasure, and Rasputin went on a pilgrimage to Palestine. Despite the scandal, the imperial family's association with Rasputin continued until his murder on the 17th of December 1916. Our friend is so contented with our girlies, says they have gone through heavy courses for their age and their souls have much developed. Alexandra wrote to Nicholas II on the 6th of December 1916. In his memoirs, A. Mordvinov reported that the 4 Grand Duchesses appeared cold and visibly terribly upset by Rasputin's death, and sat huddled up closely together on a sofa in one of their bedrooms on the night they received the news. Mordvinov reported that the young women were in a gloomy mood and seemed to sense the political upheaval that was about to be unleashed. Rasputin was buried with an icon signed on its reverse side by the Grand Duchesses and their mother. The imperial family's belief in Rasputin's healing powers brought him considerable status and power at court. Nicholas II appointed Rasputin his lampadnik, or lamplighter, charged with keeping the lamps lit before religious icons in the palace, which gained him regular access to the palace and imperial family. By December 1906, Rasputin had become close enough to ask a special favor of the Tsar, that he be permitted to change his surname to Rasputin Navi or Rasputin Nu. Nicholas granted the request, and the name change was speedily processed, suggesting that Rasputin already had the Tsar's favor at that early date. Rasputin used his position to full effect, accepting bribes and sexual favors from admirers and working diligently to expand his influence. Rasputin soon became a controversial figure. He was accused by his enemies of religious heresy and rape, was suspected of exerting undue political influence over the Tsar, and was even rumored to be having an affair with the Tsarina. Opposition to Rasputin's influence grew within the Eastern Orthodox Church. In 1907, the local clergy in Pokrovskoye denounced Rasputin as a heretic, and the Bishop of Tobolsk launched an inquest into his activities, accusing him of spreading false, KH-list-like doctrines. In St. Petersburg, Rasputin faced opposition from even more prominent critics, including Prime Minister Pyotr Stolypin and the Okhrana, the Tsar's secret police. Having ordered an investigation into Rasputin's activities, Stolypin confronted Nicholas II, but did not succeed in reining in Rasputin's influence or exiling him from St. Petersburg. Outside of the royal court, Rasputin preached that physical contact between him and others purified them. He engaged in drunken revels and extramarital affairs with a wide range of women from prostitutes to high society ladies. In 1909, Kiania Berlitskaya, one of Rasputin's early supporters, accused him of rape. Berlitskaya sought aid from Theophan, who became convinced that Rasputin was a danger to the monarchy. Rumors multiplied that Rasputin had assaulted female followers and behaved inappropriately on visits with the imperial family, and particularly with Nicholas II's teenage daughters Olga and Tatiana. During this period, the First World War, the dissolution of feudalism, and a meddling government bureaucracy all contributed to Russia's rapid economic decline. Many laid the blame on Alexandra and Rasputin. One outspoken member of the Duma, far-right politician Vladimir Purishkevich, stated in November 1916 that he held the Tsar's ministers had been turned into marionettes. Marionettes whose threads have been taken firmly in hand by Rasputin and the Empress Alexandra Fyodorovna, the evil genius of Russia and the Tsarina, who has remained a German on the Russian throne and alien to the country and its people. The Tsarina had been born a German princess. On the 12th of July 1914, a 33-year-old peasant woman named Kiania Guseva attempted to assassinate Rasputin by stabbing him in the stomach outside his home in Pokrovskoye. Rasputin was seriously wounded, and for a time it was not clear if he would survive. After surgery and some time in a hospital in Tyumen, he recovered. Guseva was a follower of Ilyodar, a former priest who had supported Rasputin before denouncing his sexual escapades and self-aggrandizement in December 1911. A radical conservative and anti-Semite, Ilyodar had been part of a group of establishment figures who had attempted to drive a wedge between Rasputin and the imperial family in 1911. When this effort failed, Ilyodar was banished from St. Petersburg and was ultimately defrocked. Guseva claimed to have acted alone, having read about Rasputin in the newspapers and believing him to be a false prophet and even an antichrist. Both the police and Rasputin, however, believed that Ilyodar had instigated the assassination attempt. Ilyodar fled the country before he could be questioned, and Guseva was found to be not responsible for her actions by reason of insanity. A group of nobles led by Purishkevich, Grand Duke Dmitry Pavlovich and Prince Felix Yusupov decided that Rasputin's influence over Alexandra threatened the Russian Empire. They concocted a plan in December 1916 to kill Rasputin, apparently by luring him to the Yusupov's Moika Palace. Rasputin was murdered during the early morning on the 30th of December 1916 at the home of Prince Yusupov. He died of 3 gunshot wounds, one of which was a close-range shot to his forehead. Little is certain about his death beyond this, and the circumstances of his death have been the subject of considerable speculation. According to Smith, what really happened at the Yusupov home on the 17th of December will never be known. The story that Yusupov recounted in his memoirs, however, has become the most frequently told version of events. According to Yusupov's account, Rasputin was invited to his palace shortly after midnight and ushered into the basement. Yusupov offered tea and cakes which had been laced with cyanide. After initially refusing the cakes, Rasputin began to eat them and, to Yusupov's surprise, appeared unaffected by the poison. Rasputin then asked for some Madeira wine, which had also been poisoned, and drank 3 glasses, but still showed no sign of distress. At around 2:30 in the morning, Yusupov excused himself to go upstairs, where his fellow conspirators were waiting. He took a revolver from Pavlovich, then returned to the basement and told Rasputin that he had better look at the crucifix and say a prayer, referring to a crucifix in the room, then shot him once in the chest. The conspirators then drove to Rasputin's apartment, with Sukhatin wearing Rasputin's coat and hat in an attempt to make it look as though Rasputin had returned home that night. Upon returning to his palace, Yusupov went back to the basement to ensure that Rasputin was dead. Suddenly, Rasputin leaped up and attacked Yusupov, who freed himself with some effort and fled upstairs. Rasputin followed Yusupov into the palace's courtyard, where he was shot by Purishkevich. He collapsed into a snowbank. The conspirators then wrapped his body in cloth, drove it to the Petrovsky Bridge, and dropped it into the Little Nevka River. In an unsubstantiated claim, Grand Duchess Tatyana, who was earlier alleged to have been raped by Rasputin, was present at the site of Rasputin's murder, disguised as a lieutenant of the Chevalier's Guards, so that she could revenge herself on Rasputin, who had tried to violate her. Maurice Palyalog, the French ambassador to Russia, wrote that Tatyana had supposedly witnessed Rasputin's castration, but he doubted the credibility of the rumor. In a modern analysis of Rasputin's death, published on the 100th anniversary of the event, Dr. Carolyn Harris of the University of Toronto notes that the actual circumstances were apparently less dramatic than Yusupov's account. Rasputin's daughter recorded that her father disliked sweet food and would not have eaten the supposedly poisoned cakes. An autopsy account by the official surgeon involved has no record of poisoning or drowning, but simply records death by a single bullet fired into the head at close range. News of Rasputin's murder spread quickly, even before his body was found. According to Smith, Purishkevich spoke openly about the murder to 2 soldiers and to a policeman who was investigating reports of shots shortly after the event, but urged them not to tell anyone else. An investigation was launched the next morning. The Stock Exchange Gazette ran a report of Rasputin's death after a party in one of the most aristocratic homes in the center of the city on the afternoon of the 30th of December 1916. After 2 workmen discovered blood on the railing of the Petrovsky Bridge and a boot on the ice below, police began searching the area. Rasputin's body was found under the river ice on the 1st of January, Old Style, or the 19th of December, approximately 200 meters downstream from the bridge. Dmitry Kosarodov, the city's senior autopsy surgeon, examined the body. Kosarodov's report was lost, but he later stated that Rasputin's body had shown signs of severe trauma, including 3 gunshot wounds, one at close range to the forehead, a slice wound to his left side, and other injuries, many of which Kosorotov felt had been sustained post-mortem. Kosorotov found a single bullet in Rasputin's body, but stated that it was too badly deformed and of a type 2 widely used to trace. He found no evidence that Rasputin had been poisoned. According to both Smith and Fuhrman, Kosorotov found no water in Rasputin's lungs, and reports that Rasputin had been thrown into the water alive were incorrect. Some later accounts claimed that Rasputin's penis had been severed, but Kosorotov found his genitals intact. Rasputin was buried on the 2nd of January, Old Style, 21st of December, at a small church that Anna Vyrubova had been building at Tsarskoye Selo. The funeral was attended only by the imperial family and a few of their intimates. Rasputin's wife, mistress, and children were not invited, although his daughters met with the imperial family at Vyrubova's home later that day. The imperial family planned to build a church over Rasputin's grave site. However, his body was exhumed and burned by a detachment of soldiers on the orders of Alexander Kerensky, shortly after Nicholas II abdicated the throne in March 1917, so that his grave would not become a rallying point for supporters of the old regime. Rasputin's daughter, Maria Rasputin, born Matriona Rasputina, from 1898 to 1977, emigrated to France after the October Revolution and then to the United States. There she worked as a dancer and then a lion tamer in a circus.